Good morning. First went to see my GP in 2004. I had become increasingly breathless and overwhelmingly tired, despite my attempts to get fit at the gym and generally take more exercise. I was sent to a cardiologist who, after numerous tests, sent me to the respiratory consultant, who again did more tests. And we started down the asthma route. How after things did not improve, and after a trip to Switzerland in 2006, when every hill seemed like a mountain and a very bad dizzy spell at the top of the Jungfrau, I returned to the consultants. I have to admit, during this period, I was beginning to think that there was nothing wrong with me and that it was all in my head because the cause could not be found. However, the two consultants, along with my GP, persevered, and after an MRI scan, when we had that eureka moment, I was sent to the PH specialist in the spring of 2007. I was asked to... missed a bit out. It was there that I finally had a confirmed diagnosis of chronic thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension, or CTEPH, as most call it. It was almost a relief, as I knew it was not all in my head. The sense of relief was mixed with despair as I realised what I was dealing with. At first, it was thought that my clots were not operable, but my papers were sent to the Papworth for review. In the meantime, I was started on bosentan and kept on warfarin, which I'd started prior to diagnosis. I was asked to stay off work to give bosentan a chance to work. This, for me, was really hard. Not only had I been diagnosed with a deteriorating lung condition, for which there was no cure, but they also asked me to take 3 months off work to sit at home and think about it. I was just beginning to get my head around it when about 10 weeks after diagnosis, I got a letter from the Papworth saying, could I go for an appointment in August? I was so surprised that I rang them up to say that if they were just having me there to say they couldn't do anything, I'd rather not go. However, I was very kindly told that they wouldn't be seeing me if they didn't think they could do something. So in August, Keith and I made our way to Papworth. I had some really bad emotional days during this period, as I think all PH patients do, trying to understand the condition and why it had picked on me. Now there was a possibility of an operation, more mental turmoil. In August, I went to see Mr. Jenkins at the Papworth and was talked through the operation by him and the specialist nurse Maureen. Because I have some distal clots, I knew that they couldn't all be removed, but it was hoped that by removing the large ones at the top, this would improve my condition. This was a scary day. Not only was I at a hospital that I'd never been to before, but they also wanted to perform what could be up to 10 hours of surgery. It was clear from the start how challenging the operation is, but also that the success rate is high. The appointment in August was in the middle of my guide unit's summer camp. So the journey from Papworth was a time of reflection and discussion with my husband before returning to camp the next day. I've been involved with Girl Guiding UK since joining as a brownie at 7 years old, and the support and friendship I'd built over the years stood me in good stead at this difficult time. Once home from camp, Keith and I sat down and discussed the options with the family. We have 3 grown-up children. We made the decision that we would go for the operation. I knew I could never live with the what if scenario if I didn't have it. Having confirmed with Papworth, we then had to play the waiting game of getting an IVC filter fitted and then the operation date. The operation was planned for Wednesday the 17th of October 2007, a day not forgotten easily. During the waiting time, I was supported by the specialist nurse who rang regularly to check I was okay. I suppose anyone who tells you they're fine running up to such an operation has to be lying. I was very scared, no, terrified, but I think that's perfectly normal. The one thing holding me together was that once I was asleep, I wouldn't know anything about it until I was woken up day or days after the operation. But for the family who came with me to Papworth, I think the day of the operation was very long. I was woken 24 hours later in critical care. And once awake, my 2 sons decided I was fine, so they went back to work. Fortunately, my daughter and my husband had a little more staying power. I stayed in critical care for 5 days and then transferred to the ward. I went home a week later and began the slow road to recovery. So 3 years later, where am I? Bearing in mind, before PH, I had always lived life at full speed, filled with family life, working, guiding. I've had to make a few adjustments. I still have PH, and I knew that at the time of the op because of the distal clots. My drugs have changed. I use oxygen overnight, but this is a small price to pay for the quality of life I have now. I continue to be treated at the Papworth, and am forever grateful for the care I received from all the PH team at the hospital. They're brilliant. There are some things I can no longer do, but I've replaced them with other things, as I'm not the type of person to sit around and take it easy, although I do have to pace myself, especially when life is really busy, and have to admit to a tendency to push the limits. However, I don't think I will ever come to terms with doing things slowly. I returned to work at school, encouraged by Papworth 4.5 months after surgery, and am now working 16 hours a week, although I no longer take classes. However, the school has found me a niche managing all the assessment data, and I am enjoying it, although I do miss working with the children. I'm lucky in that my head did everything she could to enable me to return to work, something that I know does not happen to everybody. I'm still doing my guiding. I can no longer camp in a tent. You've yet to be able to plug an oxygen machine into a tree, but can attend camp if I can sleep indoors, and this year attended my county's centenary camp with 800 others. Did take me about 2 weeks to recover though, but it was worth it. I do attend guides every week, and although I cannot do all the activities, I do other things instead. I also have a management role in my county and region, so I can use my skills in that way. I try and go for a plod with my dog every day. I plod, he runs. I'm lucky that where we walk is fairly flat. I think I will always try to push the boundaries and sometimes pay the price. Now I'm going to say something a little weird here. The best thing about having PH is the wonderful and inspirational friends I have met at conferences, through the PHA and the forum, locally in Hampshire, and through the Papworth support group. We all support each other and help boost morale when it's needed most. And I would last like to mention Jackie from the support group, who's currently, I hope, watching this, residing in Costa del Papworth, receiving treatment. Wishing you well, Jackie. See you soon. Finally, my PH journey would not be complete without thanking my whole family, but especially Stephen, Jonathan and Caroline, who have teased me, cajoled me, and generally kicked me up the backside when needed. And lastly, my husband Keith, who's always been there for me. He has taken over the household tasks I cannot do, puts up with me on the bad days as well as enjoying the good ones. Without their constant support, I would not be where I am now, so thank you.